Hey everybody, welcome to the 4th episode of Owen's Thoughts on, where today we're going to be taking a look at Crash Bandicoot 1 from the Crash Bandicoot N.Sane Trilogy. So, Crash Bandicoot. Of course, we all know that the original game came out for the PlayStation 1 in the 90s, and it is obviously a very, very good game, a 2D, 3D platformer, and here we are, we have the original version here. Yeah, very, very great game. We know it's great, we've seen all the reviews, we know it's a classic, this, that and the other. Beautiful manual, really, really good game, but how does the N.Sane Trilogy remaster this? How does it do it better? How has it changed? Is it as good? Is it better? Is it worse? We're going to find out, but before we do that, let's take a look at the original Crash. This is the original Crash Bandicoot, and this is the original manual there that you're seeing. Yep, very, very beautiful. Again, 90s it would have had a manual with it. Nowadays we're not really going to get that. In comparison to now, this doesn't really add up. This is way better than what we get now in comparison. But yeah, this is Crash Bandicoot for the PlayStation 1. And yes, just to compare, here is the N.Sane Trilogy released for Nintendo Switch, and that's where I'm going to be reviewing the first game within this trilogy. And yeah, the artwork is better, obviously because there's been time there, 20 odd years, but the inside is very disappointing with no manual, and it's very, very bland. Just a cartridge and some legal information. I know it's a minor nitpick, but I just thought I'd mention it. The game was developed by Vicarious Visions, who were also famous for Cheat! Moving on to the game itself though, Crash Bandicoot himself controlled like butter. I have to say, some people had some complaints about the controls, how Crash felt and how he would work within the game. Some people thought he was a little bit floaty or wasn't that responsive to controls. I don't agree with that at all. I believe he controls great, I believe he feels great. I feel like the weight of Crash is perfect in the way that he moves, and he just runs and walks really, really well. When the game actually came out, there was a lot of people saying it was really, really hard, and that is true. Some of the levels can be really, really tough, but it's just a matter of memorising them and learning how to do that level, or just going over the level over and over again, and eventually you'll get there. I didn't find it too hard. Again, I did find some levels sort of hard, but it did take a while for me to get used to them. But once I got used to a level, it wouldn't take me long to beat that level, and now I can go back to them and be okay. Die only a few times instead of a load of times. The game itself was a remake in pretty much every single way possible. Every asset was remade. It was completely made brand new from the ground up in HD, and I think that was where a lot of people's praise for the game was, but I think it was where a lot of issues were raised from the game as well, because people did like how beautiful the game looked and that it wasn't just a HD remaster or a port of the original 1996 game, but people were complaining about the controls and sort of the level design and the game itself being as old as it was. I don't see that as a negative, I see that as a good thing, because they're just remaking what was previously there. They're not changing things that were in the original game, which I kind of like. The game itself is a 2D, 3D platformer with some 3D levels such as the boulder levels within the game, and I've got to say, even on Nintendo Switch, this game does stay at a solid 30 frames per second. I believe that was another criticism that some people did have, that across the board, no matter where you play this game, apart from PC, that the game was locked to a 30 FPS. However, I didn't really notice that much of a difference, and I think the game felt smooth enough. I never had any slowdown on Switch, never had any slowdown when I played it on PlayStation. I've had this game run butter smooth ever since I got it, so maybe pushing it to 60 might have some issues with that. But I feel like a solid frame rate, always at 30, was probably the best decision to make here. In terms of the Switch version runs at 720p while docked. However, it runs at a sub HD at 540p undocked, which does sound not great, and I don't think it does run at HD while undocked, but I've got to say the game does look very, very crisp and very, very clear regardless of this. I don't know if that's because of the Switch's screen or just there's not a lot going on screen but at a given time, but the game does look good and it runs great no matter where you play it. And I've got to say, the only real difference you can tell with the Switch port than any other version is some lighting effects, which isn't really a big part of how the Crash levels are designed. Lighting isn't a big part of Crash, and I feel like another big thing that you can see with the Switch version is the lighting around Crash himself, but especially on his fur. Crash appears more plasticky within this Switch version, but it's not really a big notice. I don't really care that much. It's just, if you want the best detail, don't play the Switch version, but that stands for any Switch game. If you want to play it for portability, you're going to want the Switch version, and the only real point I can make against the visuals for Switch is that plasticky fur, but again, it didn't really bother me. Load times were also really, really good too. I believe they were like seconds long. I don't think there's a load time that's over 30 seconds long within this game. I believe the load times for the most part stayed the same from the PlayStation and Xbox versions, and that's the most impressive part about this Switch version, that they haven't really changed a lot in terms of visuals, and yet they still managed to get the load times be as short as they are. Now, I don't know if that's because of some in-game compression within the game, or how they've managed to do it, but it's been optimised very, very well for Nintendo Switch, and all 3 games on the N.Sane Trilogy package only come to about 5 gig on the Switch, so I don't really know what they've managed to do there in terms of compression, but it does work very, very well. I'm surprised at how well it runs. But that being said, I'm going to be honest here, the N.Sane Trilogy isn't the most groundbreaking in terms of graphics game we've ever seen. It is good and does look good on no matter where you play it, but it's not going to be The Witcher or Spider-Man PS4 or something like that. It's not a big, high graphic game, but it does run well for the Switch, and the graphics that are being pushed out from the Switch do run very, very well, which is why I'm surprised at how well it performs on the Switch. I mean, I have no complaints in terms of load times or visuals or anything. I'm just really, really happy on how it performs on Switch. Also, there's no update patches. That might sound really, really minor to talk about, but pretty much every single Switch game I've got has got a day 1 patch, meaning as soon as you put it into the Switch for the first time, it's got to install a minor update. Now, that update might only be a couple of megabytes, but still an update. However, the N.Sane Trilogy, at least for Nintendo Switch, has never seen any updates, and the 2 bonus levels, that being Future Tense and Stormy Ascent, are now featured on 1 cartridge, something I wish the Spyro Reignited Trilogy did. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy went for a different approach, that being the approach of having the game, 1 game of the trilogy on the cartridge and the rest you have to download. The Reignited Trilogy has a 10GB update, whereas the N.Sane Trilogy has no updates whatsoever. So if you're buying the physical edition of this for Nintendo Switch, you can expect to take up 0 data and 0 megabytes. A big reason to get this. Digital over physical. The physical edition is 0 megabytes. However, the digital edition, however, is about 5 gigs, so it is going to take up some room on your device, but not a great deal anyway. I mean, even if you don't have an SD card in your Switch, it's still taking up more and less room than Fortnite or some of the other big games on the Switch itself, so yeah, you'd be fine. About the game, there are 6 boss fights, this being Papu Papu, Ripperoo, Koala Kong, Pinstripe, NITRUS, BRIO, and CORTEX. I really like all of these boss fights. I thought they were really good. I really liked Pinstripe. I don't know, I just really like that one. I mean, it doesn't really fit in with Crash because he's like trying to shoot at you, and I just found that one really, really fun because you're hiding behind chairs. It just, I don't know why, it's just my favourite boss fight. However, my least favourite boss fight has to be the CORTEX one. It just seems really anticlimactic based on the boss fights we've previously seen within the game, and it being the final game and the final level and final everything is a little bit anticlimactic. So yeah, not a great thing there, I have to say. It does look nice though. I mean, it looks nice. You can see all the WUMPA islands, which are part of the first game, then that's sort of the industrial bit as well. And the game is separated into 2 different parts there. So you start off the main part of the game in the beginning in the WUMPA islands, and then you slowly, as you get more and more towards CORTEX, everything starts to get a little bit more mechanical, a bit more industrial as we start to get closer to CORTEX. You can see all the previous levels in the background, which is nice. So yeah. I really like it. Obviously, it's a fun platformer. It took me around 25 hours to beat. However, that depends on how good you are. If you're good at this game, you're going to beat it in a matter of hours. So there's not a great deal of content here if you're good at it. Being said, this game is a trilogy, and you're really paying for 3 games here. Looking at it as a trilogy, it's definitely worth the £30 price tag. However, just buying it for Crash 1 probably isn't, but who's going to be buying it just for Crash 1? You're going to be buying it for all 3. So yeah, there's over 100 levels in total in the trilogy. I believe there's over 20 within the first game alone. So yeah, there is content throughout the entire trilogy, but in terms of the first game, or in terms of looking at a game in general, each game is definitely worth £10, is what I'm saying. So yeah, there's a lot of content there, but some people might find each individual game a little bit short, but that's why Activision have really put this together as one big trilogy. But in terms of trilogy, I feel like there's a lot of content here and definitely worth it. I got over 50 hours into it. I believe I was pushing 60 hours on Nintendo Switch. I was beating 1, 2, and 3. I have to say though, 1 is the hardest game out of the trilogy. This is probably because Crash has less moves, you can't slide or dodge, and even in Crash 3 you can get like an RPG bazooka thing which just takes out enemies, and it's a little bit overpowered. But in terms of the game, for some reason, I don't know if it's just me getting better at the games, I found 1 to be the hardest, 2 to be not as hard as the last, and then 3 to be the easiest. So it got progressively easier, but then again, that might just be my skill getting better over time. And I did manage to get about 50-60 hours out of the entire experience as a whole, so it is definitely worth it. extra content, you can also go into the bonus rooms and collect more like lives and more collectibles and defeat every box. And if you defeat every box, you'll open up relics and more challenges within that. This extra content isn't that fleshed out. I mean, it's just a matter of smash every box or go to the bonus room or whatever the case may be. And if you smash every box in certain levels, it'll unlock more levels featured down the line and different pathways, and it can sort of all interconnect that way. So there is content there if you really want to 100% this game, but a lot of fans might not want to do that because of its difficulty. But there is a lot of content there if you really want to. Also, you can play as either Crash or Coco. I believe Crash can be used in every single level, but Coco can't go in every single level, I don't believe. I think there's a couple of boss fights where Coco won't go for some reason. I don't know why. That might be because Crash has certain animations that Coco doesn't have. I'm not really sure on that one, but yeah, it is weird how that isn't happening, how we can't use Crash or Coco in all the levels, but most levels you can play as either Crash or his sister Coco. Having known all this now begs the question, where is it best to play this game? Now, you can play it obviously on an original PlayStation, or you can play it on a PlayStation 4 for the N.Sane Trilogy, you can play it on Xbox on the N.Sane Trilogy, you can play it on a Switch on the N.Sane Trilogy, or a PC on the N.Sane Trilogy. I've got to say, I have no problems with the N.Sane Trilogy itself, and I believe that the original PS1 version is a classic. However, the original PlayStation 1 version only lets you save in the bonus rooms, so you won't be able to save at every single level, and because of how hard the game is, it's going to really extend your time if you're playing it on PlayStation 1, and you could probably find it more harder, maybe more infuriating if you're playing it on the original console. It is better for more nostalgic reasons to play it like the classic way of playing it, but however, I don't think it is the proper, air quotations, way of playing it in 2020. No matter where you play it, Crash 1 is best played with the N.Sane Trilogy. That N.Sane Trilogy is going to be great no matter where you get it. I believe on PC you can get the highest graphics and the highest resolution, the highest everything. So if you're going to play it there, you're going to get the best experience in terms of visuals. Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are pretty much the same. The graphics are pretty much the same between both of those consoles. It looks very good. It's a pretty middle of the road experience. And then going to the Nintendo Switch, yes, you are seeing that graphical downgrade as I mentioned earlier, but it's really a small price to play this game portable, which does run great. So I recommend it pretty much anywhere on the N.Sane Trilogy. However, if you're a PlayStation 1 collector, then, you know, maybe you want to pick up the original. But I personally recommend the N.Sane Trilogy over the PS1 version. And in 2020, the PS1 version, in pretty good condition, is going to cost you £35 from CX. The price of retro games are really going up right now. I understand that's a mint copy, it's going to be worth more, but still, for a decent copy of this, you're looking at £35, where you can buy the N.Sane Trilogy from them for less. You can buy it for £10 less, for about £25 on the modern consoles, and you get 3 games with that on the new consoles. On the old consoles, you only get 1 game per disc, so yeah, in terms of money and in terms of what you should buy to get the most value out of your purchase, the N.Sane Trilogy is definitely a better purchase. It looks better, it runs better, it saves better, it plays better. Unless you're nostalgic for the original, or have a PlayStation 1, or find it cheap, or are a collector, there's no real reason to go back to the PS1 version, in my opinion. However, some people might disagree with that and say, you know, that's wrong, you know, we should play the original one, that's how it's intended to play by the developers. Don't save after every single level, this, that and the other, but to be honest, I had the most fun with the N.Sane Trilogy. And as someone that's played the original on PlayStation 1, and as someone that has played now the N.Sane Trilogy, I have to say the N.Sane Trilogy is a lot better in my opinion. Not only because of how Crash controls, but it gives me a desire to play it more because it does save. And yeah, this game is hard, and maybe back in the 90s they wanted to have the game harder so it'd last longer. But yeah, now in 2020, we need games to save for every level. People might not agree with that, but I personally do here, and I feel like the N.Sane Trilogy is definitely the best way to play this game. But having said that, I want to hear from everybody in the comments. What is your opinion on the Crash Bandicoot series? Is the best way to play it on a PlayStation 1 with real controllers and real hardware and real everything? Or is the best way to play it on Switch? Or is it best way to play it wherever? Where's the best way to play this game? My opinion is Nintendo Switch because it looks pretty good and it is portable. PlayStation and Xbox are also a good place to play it as well. But yeah, let me know your opinion on that, because some people might say there's not much difference between the remake and the originals. So that's fair enough. I mean, a remake such as the Crash Team Racing could be seen as a better remake because it has a lot more content and a lot more exclusive features within that remake, because this doesn't really have any content that's left out. So there's every content that you get here, apart from 2 bonus levels, is in the original PlayStation release, so you're not missing stuff in terms of content, but that's an argument people could make that
they technically are just the same game, just graphical downgrades, it doesn't save, and the controls being different. So yeah, I don't know, let me know your opinion down below on which copy you should get of the game.
So that was my thoughts on Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy, specifically Crash Bandicoot 1 within that trilogy. And yeah, I thought it was a very, very good game, and I feel like I might do Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 within future seasons of this thing I do. So maybe if you want to see that, let us know. Let me know your thoughts on this game down below, and that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching, take care, see you later. So that was Crash Bandicoot 1. I reviewed it on the N.Sane Trilogy for Nintendo Switch, and I thought it was a really, really good game. Now, next week we're going to be taking a look at Kirby Star Allies. So Kirby Star Allies came out in 2018, I played through it and remember very, very little about it. So we're going to be going back and taking a look and seeing what it is all about and seeing if I like it more than when it came out. Because I feel like there's some updates on it and I want to see what it's all about. So maybe maybe I'll like this one, maybe I won't, but we'll see what happens.